From a mysterious location inside M&T Bank Stadium, it is the Banner Ravens podcast. Paul Mancano and Jonas Shaffer live on a Sunday in September after the Ravens pull off a 41-17 victory over the Cleveland Browns to pick up their first win of the season and move to 1-1 on the 2025 campaign. We are going to break down this game from all angles, talk about what was a little bit of a slow start, talk about some progress made on the defensive side of the ball. Also talk about a great day for the wide receivers in this one. But first, let's get a quick word from our sponsors.
For the fifth year in a row, Toyota is the best resale value brand according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com, including the 2025 Grand Highlander, best in resale value for midsize SUVs. Toyota, let's go places.
Looking for the ultimate game day spot? Head to Guinness, Baltimore. We've got fresh pints, the biggest screen south of the stadium, and the perfect place to cheer on the home team. Game time is Guinness time. All right, Jonas, this ended up being a laugher. It certainly did not look like it through the first half of this ball game, but the Ravens end up with a 41-17 win over the Cleveland Browns. To start the game, I think Ravens fans were expecting Flacco versus Jackson. They were expecting maybe not a shootout, but they were expecting a little bit more offensive firepower than they got right out of the gate. And instead, they got Hopkins versus Stout. A whole lot of punts in the first half of this game. This was just a 10-3 game at halftime, but the Ravens put the pedal to the metal in the second half. They pick up 2 turnovers. They figure things out on offense. And it ended up being a blowout Ravens win and a nice refresher after what was an absolutely devastating loss last week to the Buffalo Bills.
Should I be the guy, Paul? Should I be the guy who says that John Harbaugh doesn't get enough credit for blowing out teams?
You're building this new character.
I just need to come up with a name for it. But listen, the spread was only 11.5. He goes out there, blows out the Browns by 24.5. How many other coaches in the NFL can do that, son? Tell me. No, I mean, for real, this was a weird game. I wrote about in our instance analysis afterward that, it didn't really feel like a 41-10 game there at the end, but
certainly not.
When you get short fields and you do with them, which you're supposed to, which is punch it in, or you get turnovers and you run almost all the way to the end of the end zone with them, and chances are your offense is gonna succeed from it. And that's how you win a game. That's how you score 41 points with 250 yards of total offense. It was just a very strange game that they scored one more point than they did in week 1 with about 180 fewer yards of total offense than they did in Buffalo. And again, this is, I think, a much better Browns defense, or maybe a little much better position Browns defense, just with some of the high end talent that they have to take advantage of some of the Ravens' weaknesses, which we'll definitely get into. But the Ravens, this is kind of a workmanlike effort. I think there was a collective clenching of the tuchus in the fourth quarter there when
certainly
the Browns got within striking range, but then you look up and a couple turnovers, a couple big plays, and the Ravens were basically in cruise control.
Yeah, it was an ugly kind of slop fest, defensive first, punt fest in the first half of this game. Some ugly stats. After the first quarter, Cleveland had 2 rushing yards total. The Ravens had -2. In the first half, they had just 9 carries for 14 yards as a team. They had more punts than first downs in that first half. It was the complete opposite of what we saw a week ago against the Bills. But like you said, Jonas, this is a Browns defense that was great 2 years ago, took several steps back last year. And this year, it seems like Jim Schwartz has them playing a whole lot better, a whole lot closer to their 2023 selves. And they just could not get Derrick Henry going at all. You combine that with the fact that Lamar Jackson wasn't quite as accurate as we're used to seeing him. He was missing some guys over the middle. He was throwing short of the sticks on third down in a lot of instances. And this offense was very much bogged down in the first half. And it wasn't until halftime, it wasn't until the third quarter, they start to get the wide receivers involved. Zay Flowers has 2 plays for him right out of the break. Then Lamar Jackson finds DeAndre Hopkins on what D-Hop thought should have been a touchdown. He said, I don't know. After the game, he said, I don't know what I did to anybody in New York to deserve being ruled short of the first down. He's ruled down at the half-yard mark. They end up not scoring a touchdown, settling for a field goal on that drive. They get the ball back because of a turnover. First turnover that the Ravens have forced as a defense since Michael Pierce's interception at the end of last season against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Or no, the Browns. That's right. They come back down the field. They almost have another horrendous goal line performance, but end up scoring a touchdown to Devontez Walker in the back of the end zone. And that kind of was a nice sigh of relief for this offense. They go on to roll Cleveland 41-17. But there was certainly some collective breath holding, some collective murmurs of discontent, I think you could say, through M&T Bank Stadium when the Browns pull within 10 in the second half and make it a 20-10 game. I think a lot of Ravens fans were thinking, are we witnessing the same thing that we saw in Buffalo? Are we witnessing the same thing that we saw against the Browns recently at this stadium, at M&T Bank Stadium? But whether it was the fact that the Browns are not as good a team, whether it was the fact that the Ravens have learned their lesson, who's to say? But the Ravens do come out with a win.
The weird, I believe, wasn't it last week that the Ravens finished with 53 plays?
I think so.
Thereabouts. Do you want to take a guess at what they finished with today?
Was it 53?
53.
Wow.
On the money. Maybe it was thereabouts in week one. The collective apprehension about possibly a team getting worn out. Obviously, the Ravens didn't really have to worry about the Browns running game the way that they did the Bills running game, or Joe Flacco making stuff happen out of structure the way Josh Allen could. But yeah, I mean, like we talked about in the preview, there's enough talent on this team between Jerry Jeudy and Harold Fannin, David Njoku, Cedric Tillman, who had one of the luckiest catches you will ever see today. That they could have put a scare into the Ravens, and they probably did. But obviously, the watchword afterward from Lamar and John Harbaugh was maturity, and the Ravens showed.
You could say it's our word of the day, even.
You could, and I don't know if they'll be printing it out on T-shirts and handing them out like the way that John Harbaugh likes to, but certainly guys answered the bell in a way that they absolutely did not last week.
Yeah, let's talk about the offense, because we did not see Derrick Henry break out ever in this game. 3 carries for -5 yards in the first quarter. He ends this game with 11 carries for just 23 yards, so 2.1 yards per carry, did not score a touchdown, and did not catch a pass. This was not a Derrick Henry game. This was also not a Mark Andrews game. He had one tush push that he converted, but other than that, he caught just one pass for 2 yards. He also committed at one point an offensive pass interference. I believe it
wasn't that Tylan Wallace.
Was it Tylan Wallace that got flagged for it? I thought it was Mark Andrews. We'll go back and look. I thought he was kind of blocking downfield when 2 guys were in the same area. Anyway, he also dropped a pass in the back of the end zone.
There were 2 of those
that would have been a touchdown, and the Ravens end up having to settle for a field goal. So not a great day for Mark Andrews or the tight ends. Not a great day for the running game. Justice Hill finishes with just 3 carries for 7 yards. Lamar couldn't or didn't even try really to get anything going on the ground with his legs. Just 2 carries for 13 yards for Lamar. But then you look at the wide receivers. Zay Flowers, who had a quietly terrific game last week against the Bills. We didn't talk a whole lot about it because there was so much other stuff to talk about, but he had an awesome opener last week on the road. And today, 7 catches for 75 yards. DeAndre Hopkins now has caught every target, I believe, that has been hurled his way. 2 catches for 64 yards, the one that should have been a touchdown, and then he does get a touchdown in the fourth quarter. Devontez Walker, 3 NFL catches, 3 NFL touchdowns, catches 2 touchdown passes today. And Tylan Wallace, 2 catches for 25 yards and a touchdown. So the wide receivers really buoyed this offense.
I'm going to regret asking you this, Paul, but in your weird baseball brain, can you think of a player who started their career by homering in their first 3 at-bats? Because I feel like that's where we are with Devontez Walker at this point.
I don't know. I certainly can't name one, but
what a disappointment.
Yeah, sorry.
But with Derrick Henry, obviously, the stats flatter no one, but I think you look at the next-gen stats, his projected production today, based on the blocking, based on where the Browns were defensively, 11 carries for 30 yards. So obviously a little under expectation for him to be 11 carries for 23 yards, but I think that just goes to show what few opportunities the Ravens had up front. It looked like the guards in particular really had a tough day with the Browns' athleticism. Obviously, Myles Garrett was really giving Ronnie Stanley a lot of problems with getting into his chest and knocking him off the ball and displacing him. Obviously, I think, curious to see just how much of an impact Carson Schlesinger had in his Ravens, debut in his AFC North. I guess not AFC North debut in his AFC North road debut.
Sure.
But it seems like very rarely were the Ravens able to find any lanes to that second level. And, I think you could have some complaints with the Ravens maybe not being willing to take advantage of the Browns' aggressiveness with some read options, or maybe there was that one end around that didn't really do a whole lot. But, Cleveland plays with these very wide alignments, these wide 9 alignments, where if you're a fan of the Eagles or the Browns, this is just how they do things. On neutral downs, they'll send Myles Garrett wide. They'll have their other pass rusher very wide of the tackle, and they'll basically dare you to shoot upfield. And the Ravens couldn't find a way to punch them. I think that their first play today was one of those, crunch wham concepts where they're daring the defensive tackle to get a little bit too far upfield. He's blocked by a fullback or a tight end, allowing the guards to climb to that second level. And I think the Ravens tried that, and it went absolutely nowhere. So that was a pretty bad sign for what kind of day the Ravens offense was in store for on the ground. And obviously that led to a lot of, less than navigable situations for the drop back passing game, where they were just found themselves at 3rd and long constantly in that first half. And obviously Lamar was sacked, I think, 3 times today. I think Ronnie was on the hook for at least one of them. He held Myles Garrett to no sacks and I think 3 pressures in their game in Baltimore last year. But I think you really felt in a lot of ways, running and passing, the impact of not having Patrick Ricard out there. You felt less confident in the play action passing game. You felt less oomph in the run game. And you just felt, just less secure in general there with not having a basically 6 offensive linemen out there. I mean, Charlie Kohler, bless his heart, gives you some good reps, but every once in a while he'll just, he offers a little bit of a reminder that he is still at his heart a receiving tight end who is doing his best to be this inline blocker, but just doesn't have the oomph sometimes.
Yeah, and Zaire Mitchell-Payton played another key role in this one, like he did last week as a blocker mostly. The Ravens did, it seemed like, script a play for him near the goal line on that first failed goal line stand where Lamar is rolling to his right and he's looking for Zaire Mitchell-Payton and he's completely covered and ends up being an incompletion in the back of the end zone. I don't know exactly why that was that play was scripted towards him, but
were you watching any of Notre Dame, Texas A&M last night?
I was not.
That was a crazy game, and to go ahead for the would-be game winning touchdown because Notre Dame.
I did see the last play. Yeah,
like they drew up a pass for the least likely guy on the field to catch it because the coach expected Notre Dame to double their 2 best receivers. So it was just a very strange rollout, but it worked, and it almost worked for Zaire Mitchell-Payton. He got his right hand on the ball, but he was just the placement and where the defender was just didn't allow for the completion.
It was certainly not likely because Mitchell-Payton is not Isaiah Likely, but yeah, maybe Todd Monken saw that last night and decided to script something up for him.
It was a late night for him.
Didn't quite work out. But I think this game, there were a couple moments in this game where the Ravens you could feel the pressure, you could feel the tension on this offense, you could feel them perhaps tightening up and not being able to break through this Browns defense. One, the completion downfield to DeAndre Hopkins. It felt very similar to his first touchdown catch as a Raven last week against the Bills, where it seems like he is not open. But the one thing about DeAndre Hopkins is even when he's not open, he's open. It was tight coverage down the field. Lamar just lobs it up to him, and it's a terrific catch on the half-yard marker for DeAndre Hopkins. That felt like a great encapsulation of what DeAndre Hopkins can bring to this team, which is a get-out-of-jail-free card for Lamar Jackson. And that felt like, all right, they're turning the page. They have and it felt like if the Ravens had pulled out the win last week against the Bills, that would have been a big turning point in that game too, was the touchdown that DeAndre Hopkins pulled out, because it's like, all right, this is what this team has lacked for several years and they have it now. And that's how they're going to be able to pull out the win. Didn't work out last week. And this week he's ruled down at the yard marker and they still can't punch it in the end zone. But also maybe another lesson that they learned from last week. And I'm curious to get your thoughts, Jonas, as to whether you think John Harbaugh's decision to go for it on 4th and goal after the Ravens had just settled for a field goal where Hopkins, On the previous possession, Hopkins ruled down at the half-yard marker. Ravens settle for a field goal because they can't push it into the end zone. Nate Wiggins gets the interception, takes it back about 60 yards. Ravens are set up once again, 1st and goal. It comes down to 4th down. It's like 4th and goal from about the 5. Do you think John Harbaugh was perhaps influenced by the fact that he did not go for it last week on 4th and 3 from his own 38? The Ravens end up losing to the Bills. Do you think that made him a little bit more aggressive to go for it on 4th and goal from the Browns 4 or 5 yard line?
I think it was probably just a function of the fact that they couldn't come away with that with only a field goal, and also just a trust in the defense that even if they did come away from that drive with nothing, Cleveland's probably not responding with more than a couple first downs, and so you get a fresh set of downs. I'm just scrolling through the Ben Baldwin bot to see what they had as a play recommendation, if that indeed make the cut for the Ravens. I think it was a bit of a strange situation, because you felt like every time the Ravens lined up in 3rd and short, 4th and short, that wasn't 1 yard to go, it seemed like everyone in the building knew that the Ravens weren't going to run the ball, because just they were not getting any push whatsoever. And so I think
it was 4th and
expected
goal. It was from the 2 yard line, by the way, not the 4 or 5.
Right. I certainly expected. I think the Browns probably expected. I think most of the fans in the building probably expected a straight drop back or a kind of play action pass, and that they went with the play action pass. And I don't know what read Devontez Walker was on that one, but I don't think he was the first or second one. So good on him for using that speed to get across horizontally. That was something that we talked about, even if he's not winning vertically, which he did today on his big touchdown catch. Just the fact that he is this kind of linear guy who, if you get him going downhill in a certain direction, he has that kind of speed where he can pull away from guys. And even though you wouldn't expect a guy who doesn't really have the kind of route running chops or the physicality to win in the red zone, Devontez Walker doesn't really profile like that, but the Ravens were able to find it, because I guess Cleveland was in man coverage, and the Ravens got the kind of matchup that they wanted coming across the back of the end zone. And Lamar did just enough to keep that play long enough to find Tez, and good on him for catching the ball.
We're 2 weeks in, but we talked a lot this summer about how the wide receiver core could be better, because you're replacing Nelson Aguilar with DeAndre Hopkins. Even DeAndre Hopkins, in his older age relative to other wide receivers, is better at this point than Nelson Aguilar was last year. And because of the improvements that we saw from Devontez Walker this summer in training camp, he was one of the biggest storylines all training camp, all preseason. You saw that on display today. I don't know if you're going to see these wide receivers combined for 4 touchdown catches every week, but I think we can safely say through 2 weeks, the wide receiver core definitely looks a lot better right now than it did last year, and that would be a huge improvement for this offense.
I mean, it's early days yet, so we are, I think, somewhat reluctant to make these kind of comparisons. But you compare what Lamar did today, 19 for 29, 225 yards, 4 touchdowns, and you compare it to what we saw in week 1 in that game, where again Cincinnati got throttled by that Cleveland defense. And bringing up right now, if I can do my job, Joe Burrow, 14 for 23, 113 yards, 1 touchdown. So Lamar was basically twice as productive, twice as prolific through the air. Obviously, 3 more touchdowns. I think Lamar had 1 more sack taken than Joe Burrow did, which I guess is to be expected with how he kind of likes to create and all that stuff. But if you're using the Bengals based on what they were able to do today with Jake Browning as quarterback, even after Joe Burrow got hurt, I think you've got to feel really good. Again, we don't know yet if this Browns defense is going to be like the ultimate yardstick for offensive success. But I think based off what we saw the Ravens do against an average to maybe good Bills defense, come back today, have a pretty rough first half, and just find a way to explode in that second half. I mean, they scored every single time that they had the ball in the second half, didn't they? I know a lot of that was short fields, but that's a really, really impressive way to respond after a pretty lackluster first half.
Yeah. Let's talk about the defense as well. Let's talk about the fact that Teddy Buchanan got the start at inside linebacker next to Roquan Smith over Trenton Simpson. Last week, Teddy Buchanan, the 4th round rookie, outsnapped Trenton Simpson, but Trenton Simpson did start that game. John Harbaugh kind of downplayed that this week when he was asked about it. He said it was only 2 or 3 snaps that the difference was, and he was right. But Teddy Buchanan I haven't seen the snap counts come out yet, but right now it certainly feels like the Ravens have more faith in Buchanan next to Roquan than they do in Trenton Simpson. No.
Yeah, it was not not an especially promising start. I think there was that first down throw where it looks like Teddy is trying to relate to a guy who's coming across the middle of the field on a crosser, on an imbalanced passing set, and he just ignores Njoku or Fannin or whoever it was for that 12-yard gain up the middle. So that was not especially promising. But again, I think the Ravens did a pretty good job for the most part. Roquan still looks a little slow in readjusting to guys on the fly.
He looked great picking up that fumble by Joe Flacco
downhill
and taking it the distance.
Yeah. But I think probably the ultimate acid test for this defense will come next week, because and again, we don't know yet if Chicago, and I haven't really seen a whole lot of the Bears offense, but few teams have done it better in recent memory than the 23-24 Bears at attacking the middle of the defense, just using play action, using Jared Goff's eyes to uncover dudes over the middle. And if Teddy Buchanan's not right, if Roquan Smith's not right, if the middle and the spine of that defense is compromised in any way, then based off what I assume Jared Goff did today against Chicago, then the Ravens could be in for another potential shootout. But I think you have to like what you saw for the most part today. It seems like the pass rush tailed off a little in that second half. Maybe that was just guys getting tired after Kyle Van Noy went down with his hamstring injury. Obviously, they lost Marlon for a part of that second half. But I think you just look at a per play basis. The Ravens were really good against this Browns offense, and obviously the 2 turnovers and the couple turnovers on downs that they forced speak for themselves.
You were in John Harbaugh's postgame press conference. What did he say about those injuries? Marlon Humphrey leaves that game super late, fourth quarter, pretty much when the game is in hand. And Kyle Van Noy leaves this game in the first half, I believe. Was it the first half? And was ruled out. Second quarter, and was ruled out with his hamstring injury. We also saw Rasheen Ali, Ravens' third running back, as Keaton Mitchell is once again inactive, out with a concussion that he suffered on the opening kickoff. Those 3 injuries, what did John Harbaugh say about those?
He said, we'll know more Monday. He said they're not season enders, which is, I think, probably less encouraging than it sounds, because I think you invariably go to, well, if it's not season ending, how close to season ending is it? Obviously, if it's any kind of a strain for Kyle Van Noy, then a strain is a tear of the hamstring, and those usually take a couple weeks to come back from. Marlon looked like he was running around on the sideline after he came back in from the locker room in that fourth quarter. So you just hope that, based off the time and the circumstances of that game late, that he could have come back if he wanted to. We didn't get a chance to see him post game, so we don't know what's going on there, nor do we see Kyle Van Noy. Rasheen Ali, I think, is it could go anywhere, because if you remember, concussion was what really dinged him early in his rookie year in that preseason, where he just lost so much time not being able to get on the field because he was going through that kind of stuff. So hopefully it's not, obviously he's going to be in the protocol this week, and hopefully it is something he escapes pretty quickly. But you just worry about these guys who have a history of head injuries, because it is a brain on the bruise, and those things don't get easier to manage. But obviously the Ravens, it's kind of all hands on deck with an offense like the Lions, even with their even with their offseason losses up front. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Jared Goff, Sam Laporta, Gibbs, Montgomery. That's just a extremely, extremely talented offense. Yeah.
Talking about Teddy Buchanan, by the way, gives us an opportunity to play my favorite clip, which I don't even know if I'm going to be able to find, but it gives us an opportunity to shout out Gianna Hahn's story, by the way, that she wrote about Teddy Buchanan, which you can get on thebanner.com, where you can subscribe just $1 for 6 months, about how much the Ravens 4th round rookie linebacker loves avocados. And then I made a great graphic on all of our social channels at Balt Banner Sports on Instagram. Got like less than 100 likes. It was an utter disaster. That's like an utter disaster of a post. I don't know why. Just utterly bombed. Did you like it, Jonas?
I didn't. I don't like most things on social media. I'm trying to leave as little a footprint as possible with my activity.
Well, I'll tell you what John Harbaugh likes.
Shout out to the banner.
John Harbaugh likes the Baltimore Banner. Shout out to the Banner.
Okay. I didn't hear that first part in there. John Harbaugh also likes turnovers. And
Jonas, I'm forcing you to transition because you hated that so much.
The Ravens got 2 of them today. Like I said, it was not since 2018 had the Ravens gone 3 straight games without a takeaway. So you had a feeling that if there was one team on the schedule that they would probably take for their lunch money, it was probably going to be this Browns offense. And Joe, I guess, tried to force something as he was kind of scrambling to his right, and Joe is not exactly Joe Flacco when he's scrambling to his right. Overthrows it. Nate Wiggins, Ravens say he's been having great practices, and we saw him jump that ball, make great use of that 4.3 speed, just kind of weaving through upfield, almost score. And then, on the Tavius Robinson sack, just pops that ball out at just the right time, because a split second later, that's probably a sack. And Roquan gets on his horse. He gets some help from some guys, and they a clear path for him for, I believe, only his second career defensive touchdown.
So we talked about when the Ravens were talking all preseason, all training camp about we need to force more turnovers. Our defense needs to force more turnovers. One of the reasons we lost that Bills game is because we didn't force any turnovers and we gave the ball away. Turnovers are fluky. They're weird. The ball has to bounce your way. You have to get lucky. You can create your own luck to a certain extent by forcing pressure on the opposing quarterback to make bad decisions, by being aggressive and rallying towards the football and trying to punch it out. But you ultimately have to get pretty lucky. The Ravens got lucky today. One, they got lucky that Derrick Henry's fumble was recovered by Tylan Wallace, another great moment in the game for Tylan Wallace. And two, they got lucky that Joe Flacco made a terrible decision throwing that ball. I think the third turnover you could say, or the second turnover for the Ravens defense, you could say was the most that they caused. That was a lot of their own doing because the pass rush finally got home to Joe Flacco and forced that turnover. But these are fluky. And do better quarterbacks that, not throw the ball away? Yes. So a little bit of this is fluky, but I think that the Ravens defense will certainly enjoy, and John Harbaugh and Zach Orr will certainly enjoy, not having to talk about how the Ravens still haven't forced a turnover since Michael Pierce's interception. It was just a nice monkey to get off their back.
Yeah, I mean, I think Marlon in the offseason, I believe, at a training camp, posted a photo that he'd taken clearly from a defensive meeting or maybe from a team-wide meeting, just showing the Ravens week-by-week progression of that 2000 defense, with how many takeaways they generated in each single game. So for the Ravens to start off with 0 after having the opportunity to get at least 1 in that game against Buffalo. I mean, you get 1 interception. We're probably talking about the Ravens head into this game being a 1-0 team and looking like the best team in the NFL. They clearly needed to get their affairs right. And what they did today is no guarantee that any of this turnover juju is going to carry over into week 3. Obviously, Jared Goff, kind of throws some passes with some blind faith that his guys will be there, but they rattled him when he was in Baltimore a couple of years ago in that final year of the Mike McDonald experience. That was just an utter disaster for the Lions because of how much they got to him because of the turnovers that they forced. So that's going to be, like I said, it's not going to be a litmus test for their takeaway ability, but just for their overall, soundness. They got 9 quarterback hits today. There were the contributions from everyone. Nnamdi Madubuike got another sack. It was great to see him, fighting through that ankle injury, however in pain he was. Still waiting for that Travis Jones game. I think after all the talk from the Ravens coaches about just how good he can be, but Odafe Oweh showed some stuff. Kyle Van Noy was getting turning the corner, but while he was still healthy, Mike Green had a quarterback hit. So
Tavius,
obviously Tavius, pocket cruncher, glass eater supreme. good to see him do what he had to, and the Browns rushing stats might flatter their overall game, but I think Quinshon Judkins 10 carries for 61 yards. A lot of that felt like it came pretty late, and I think for the most part they were under 4 yards per carry.
Judkins ripped off that one late huge
31 yarder,
near the end of the game when it was pretty much in hand. All right, we're going to talk about the special teams and put a bow on this one on the other side of another quick break.
For the 5th year in a row, Toyota is the best resale value brand according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com, including the 2025 Grand Highlander, best in resale value for midsize SUVs. Toyota, let's go places.
Looking for the ultimate game day spot? Head to Guinness, Baltimore. We've got fresh pints, the biggest screen south of the stadium, and the perfect place to cheer on the home team. Game time is Guinness time.
All right, let's talk about the special teams in this one. For the second week in a row, Tyler Loop landed a kick short of the landing zone. That resulted in the Browns getting the ball at the 40-yard line. And then later in the game, he kicked the ball out of bounds on a kickoff. That also resulted in a penalty and the Browns getting the ball at the 40-yard line. Not ideal for a guy that you would think would have honed in on this, would have figured this out after week one. He is a rookie kicker, but not the number one goal of this new kickoff is to get it in the landing zone, get it between the 20-yard line and the end zone. Don't kick it out of the end zone because you want to avoid a touchback, but got to get it in that one small zone on the field. And he didn't do that twice today.
And I think you can see why it's so tantalizing for him and for this Ravens staff to encourage him to kick those knuckle kicks, that duck and dodge, and I'm quitting dodgeball.
Dive.
Because the Browns, when they tried to corral those balls, they had some luck. They had some bad luck. They were not super smooth in their execution there. But again, not to compare the Browns to the Lions, but for the Ravens to have the resilience to force a punt on 3 plays, a 3 and out on that first 40-yard experience, and then get an interception on the next one. I don't think you can expect that kind of production week in and week out if Tyler Loop is handing the other team a short field. So maybe we will see more of the traditional, I'm going to try to kick this to the 5-yard line, avoid a touchback, but give my guys an opportunity to hem them in. I don't know if this is more an indictment of how the Ravens feel about their coverage teams, or more just a misplaced faith perhaps in what he can do or what he has been doing in practice to kick these sidewinders and these knucklers in between the 0 and the 20. But certainly the Ravens have got to get that cleaned up. I mean, obviously, maybe after tonight we'll have a better sense of just where he ranks among the NFL kickers in terms of these kicking violations, because it's probably right at the very top.
Yeah, 3 already in 2 weeks is a lot. He did hit both his field goal attempts long from 43, and he did go 5 of 5 on extra points. So other than that, a good day for Tyler Loop. We saw a little bit of LeJontay Wester juice on punt return. I thought he was going to take it to the house, ended up taking it over 20 yards and setting up the Ravens with great field position on what I believe was the first punt return of the day for LeJontay Wester. And then Jordan Stout, great game from the punter. Obviously, we don't want to be talking about how great the punter is, because usually that doesn't bode well for your offense, but the Ravens scored 41 points and they had a great game from their punter.
Is it too early to start the Jordan Stout for All-Pro conversation? He's
Maybe.
had a couple of good weeks. If I'm Eric DaCosta, I'm calling up his agent as soon as this game is over and saying, I'm writing a blank check for Jordan Stout. Nah, because in all seriousness, Jordan Stout has needed a start to the season like this. This is year 4 for him. He is coming up on free agency, and I think the expectation probably is that the Ravens will keep him because they invested a lot of draft capital, and I think we're starting to see that golden leg of his finally start to be a little bit more consistent. It was interesting to see that Cleveland was aggressive in how they were playing some of these punt returns. I think they had, the returner, and then basically the up back, and then I think another person along the line of scrimmage, perhaps trying to crack that Ravens punt protection. I think that gave Jordan Stout some liberty to just put his foot through it and just try to kick the hell out of the ball, because he realized that he had Tez Walker on one side and whoever it was on the other, and they would have a much cleaner path to actually getting to the punt returner. But, it's a great job by him at eliminating the punt returns, and just, recognizing that there were some opportunities for him to really flip the field. And I think for the most part, I think maybe he could have done a better job on that last punt before halftime. That gave Cleveland a pretty short field that they ended up turning to that field goal. But for the most part, he was aces today.
Yeah, 259 punt yards for for Jordan Stout, I should say, on 5 punts. That's more than Lamar Jackson.
1.8.
That's more than Lamar threw for today. 225. Also, we got to shout out Jake Hummel in this game for, look, if you sign a special teams ace to do the kind of thing that he did today, which was get the first blocked punt by the Ravens since 2016, blocks a punt, sets the Ravens up with great field position. Sanusi Kane picks it up, rumbles for a few yards, and the Ravens start their possession in Browns territory. That's what you sign a guy for. He was I joked to Childs Walker, who's sitting next to me. He was out there in the pregame coin toss. It was a weird kind of group. It was Jake Hummel, Ronnie Stanley, and Zaire. I think it was Mitchell Payton. Interesting group that they threw out there. But Jake Hummel made them look good by getting a punt return in this, a punt block in this one.
It would have been even more poetic for Jake Hummel had he made the block with his other hand. Because I believe, and I haven't even talked to Jake Hummel because I haven't seen him in the locker room this year. Obviously, he's not a very high profile guy to talk to, but
I was in his scrum post game. So
did he have a wrap on either hand?
It's a great question. I didn't even see.
Okay.
He did. He said he blocked it with his good hand.
Yes, because
he said it was just instinct that it was like the play just happened to go to his good hand.
But I went as far as looking back at old, B-roll from the great Baltimore videographers of Jake Hummel being back at practice early in training camp, because he obviously missed the start of camp with I think just like a superficial wound on it that was getting in the way, and I think he's missed some time earlier in the offseason workouts. I don't know if it was the same hand, but it would have been awesome if he'd made the block with the same hand that he unfortunately kind of effed up pretty early.
Jonas, you're built different. You're going back and looking at video from training camp of the Ravens special team ace and like fourth string linebacker.
Yep.
In order to find out which hand he had hurt in July and August.
Details matter.
My God. All right. Any other things on special teams? I think we should talk about what we heard from Roquan Smith after this game as well.
Nothing else on special teams, I don't think.
All right, let's dive into Roquan Smith's comments because there was a lot of chatter coming into this week, mostly on the Browns side. The Ravens pretty much stayed out of it, and they stayed above the fray. There was talk about how easy it is, how it's not difficult to tackle Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry stayed above that. He said, we'll see on Sunday. Unfortunately, he ended up with just 23 rushing yards, so he couldn't put the hammer down on that defense, but the rest of the offense picked him up. And then the comments by Jerry Jeudy about there being no challenges when going up against the Ravens secondary. What was Roquan's response in the postgame press conference to Jerry Judy's comments from earlier this week?
It was fiery. If I can find it, he said that's what he chose to say with his mouth. And at the end of the day, it's about what you do on the field. Talking don't win you anything. It's about how you come out and play. Hats off to him for having his opinion. This is America. Freedom of speech.
I like
obviously
This is America comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, really touching, really tapping into the zeitgeist of American political culture with those last couple of lines there.
Is he running for something?
I don't think so. It was, obviously Jerry Jeudy didn't really do himself any favors today. It was 51 yards. He had a pretty bad drop on third down. The irony of today is that the biggest challenge that the Ravens presented was Marlon Humphrey having to force Cedric Tillman into making a pretty incredible reflex grab for that touchdown on a just totally bizarre deflection.
So second week in a row, though, we should mention, and this is where it really felt like deja vu, that the Ravens have forced a fourth down in their own red zone. They're up by a couple scores.
I think both of them were fourth and twos.
I think they both were fourth and twos. Happened last week against the Bills, and it happened again this week where it's 4th and 2 in their red zone. The opponent is down a couple scores. The quarterback, is bailing out of the pocket. He's rolling to his right, and he just heaves a ball towards the end zone that bounces off a Ravens defender and is caught by the opponent.
Last week
for a touchdown.
Last week it was Dawson Knox. This time it's an actual Ravens defender, but just
it hit off a Bills tight end Dawson Knox.
Right.
But this week it hits off Marlon Humphrey's hands. That's fourth down. I know the instinct is the ball is right in your hands. Marlon clearly tried to pick that off. Just knock it down. At that point, him trying to pick it off meant it bounced up off his arms and into the arms of a waiting Browns receiver.
Yeah, and not the guy that you would expect to drop an interception. I think what did Marlon have? 6 interceptions last year? He was I think probably
Mr. Hands last year.
Their best ball lock. He had 6 picks. That was a career high for him. So weird to see him literally drop the ball like that. But obviously, the fact that came after the Tez Walker back of the end zone touchdown just really highlighted how important that execution on 4th down was, because had the Ravens been stopped, come away from that drive with 0 points, and Tillman somehow made that touchdown, or the Browns finished that drive with a touchdown, it would have been a 3-point game.
Yeah.
So it might have been a very, very different story how the Ravens and Tez not come through the way they did. But again, you're not going to be able to get away with any boneheaded mistakes like that. I don't know how PFF is going to grade a guy for making a play as good as that and then as bad as that in the span of about 1 second. But I guess if you're Cedric Tillman, you tip your cap to Marlon Humphrey and say, "Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I'll see you later this season."
What was your other point you wanted to make about that 4th down?
Did I?
I don't know. There, you said the defense forced him to make a Cedric Tillman to make a difficult catch there in the back of the end zone, but that was the end of your point.
Yep.
All right. I mean, Jerry Jeudy, also going back to Jeudy, he did make one great catch over Chidobe Awuzie, who, by the way, starting again this week, we didn't even mention the fact that the biggest story pregame, Jair Alexander, a healthy scratch in this game, obviously struggled mightily last week against the Bills at the worst possible time in the 4th quarter. He acknowledged that he didn't play his best game and was not given an injury designation this week, but the Ravens make him a healthy scratch and he is inactive for this game.
Yeah. And John Harbaugh said, he said he's healthy, but he also said he's not in football shape. So I think
he missed a month. He missed a full month between August into early September of training camp.
Yeah. And it showed in week 1. And, Awuzie is a starter insofar as he's going to be that third cornerback when they're in nickel. And obviously with as many 3rd downs as the Browns were in, he saw a lot of time out there. So, the Ravens are fortunate that they have the depth that you can go from Jair Alexander to TJ Tampa as that dime cornerback, the 4th cornerback on the field, and not really feel like you're too disadvantaged. Obviously, TJ Tampa had that nice breakup in the 4th quarter. I think it might have been actually, it was a throw to Jerry Jeudy that he kind of came up from over the top on, drove down on, got his hand on the ball, and then that leads to another Ravens touchdown just a couple plays later. So the Ravens are in good shape with their cornerback depth. Obviously, Nate Wins, I thought, had a nice game today. Awuzie, other than that one play where he wasn't even guilty of like Brandon Stevens-itis. Like he got his head turned to the ball. It was just a perfectly thrown, well lofted outside shoulder bomb from 30 yards downfield. So those are the kind of, plays that I guess you are maybe kicking yourself over. But if a quarterback is having to try you with 50-50 balls like that, every other drive, I think you take your chances with a guy like Awuzie being in the position that he was.
Yeah. And then more on the injury front, I think Ravens fans, another inactive in this game, not because he was injured, is another healthy scratch. Keaton Mitchell, again, is inactive for this game, passed up for Rasheen Ali. And earlier this week, it was indicated by the coaching staff that what they like about Rasheen Ali is not just his kick return ability, but also the fact that he contributes on every single special teams alignment. Whereas Keaton Mitchell is, just about the same player in terms of a kick returner. It's not like he's worlds better than Rasheen Ali, and he doesn't contribute in those other areas. A little bit smaller, not as much of a factor in those other areas. But with Rasheen Ali maybe being out next week, Keaton Mitchell might be making his season debut.
And I don't think it was lost on the Ravens coaches either that when Ali left, I believe every single kickoff went to Tylan Wallace, who was stepping in for Rasheen Ali next to Justice Hill. So I don't think Tylan Wallace had a bad game. I think one of those returns he got out past the 30-yard line, but obviously the level of juice going from Rasheen Ali to Tylan Wallace is a pretty significant drop off. And Keaton Mitchell, again, a guy who had, I think, over 31 yards per return on his 5 returns last year. So I would imagine that if Rasheen Ali is out this week, and with his concussion history, I'm feeling like I think it's pretty safe to say it's doubtful that this early on, then Keaton Mitchell should be able to make his debut in primetime against a pretty good Lions team.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've done about 45 minutes, and we're going to do about 45 minutes more to talk about the report that came before the game from Adam Schefter of ESPN that the Ravens almost took Shedeur Sanders with their 5th round pick in the 2025 NFL draft. Jonas, we're going to break this down from every single angle. I know this is what you love to talk about. It's Paul's backup quarterback corner. I think we got to brand that now. I love talking about backup quarterbacks. In all seriousness, though, interesting report, because the Ravens, according to Adam Schefter, almost took Shedeur Sanders with their 5th round pick. And then 3 picks later, Cleveland Browns trade up for him and enter him into a locker room that already has Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett at that point, who has since been traded, and Dylan Gabriel. But the reason that the Ravens did not take Shedeur Sanders with their 5th round pick is because Shedeur's camp made it clear to the Ravens that he did not want to be there backing up Lamar Jackson. He wanted to go to a place where he thought he could potentially win a quarterback competition. Ravens pass on him, and he goes to Cleveland.
These late round machinations are always fascinating because you have guys who, in the 6th or 7th round don't want to get drafted because they know that they might have high enough stock as undrafted free agents that they would rather pick and choose where they go. They might make more money than if they just stick to the normal rookie wage scale for signing bonuses. So, he obviously he got asked about it post-game. Shedeur Sanders said, my response is, I'm focused on the now. I don't really talk about anything in the past, and whatever happened in the past, it is what it is. I'm more focused on now. I'm more focused on how this game that we just gone and had and figuring out how to move forward from now. He's also asked if the report is true. According to Daniel Oyefusi of ESPN, he said, you wouldn't even believe, my memory doesn't even go back that far. So yeah, I don't even remember anything post-draft. I remember I'm here. I go to practice every day, and it's a 24-hour rule. It serves no purpose in my life.
Is that the first time you've ever heard of a emergency QB backup 3rd string quarterback talking after a game in which he did not play?
Credit to him. I mean, I think he's probably been conditioned to expect a post-game scrum after every game.
Yeah.
Given the voraciousness of the Cleveland media mob. But I guess good on him for talking, because I think there's a lot of people in Cleveland and Baltimore who are very curious about what he has to say.
Interesting sliding doors moment. Cooper Rush had already been signed by the Ravens at that point. We don't need to go into it too much because it's, after a Ravens win, and Shedeur Sanders is not even playing for the Cleveland Browns. But maybe he would have been included on their initial 53-man roster had he been there. It certainly would have been a whole lot more media hype in training camp had he been a Raven. Obviously would have entered into no competition whatsoever because he would not be considered for QB1, and maybe not even considered for, maybe he's battling it out with Cooper Rush. Maybe he beats him out. Who's to say? But the Ravens like to take these project quarterbacks in the 6th round. Obviously, Devin Leary was the guy a year ago. Would have been an interesting, and I feel like the 5th round is the time where that's the point at which it's no longer a storyline. It's no longer a big storyline if you cut that guy. 5th round picks get cut sometimes. It's not likely, and the Ravens did it a few years ago with Kyu Blu Kelly, and it was, created a little bit of waves. They don't like to do it, but if they had taken Shedeur Sanders with a 5th round pick and he ended up not working out and they cut him, it's not the end of the world. It's a 5th round pick. And that's classic Eric DeCosta. If there is a play to be made here for upside, he sees the value and, hey, this guy is a good college quarterback and he's slipping all the way to the 5th round, might as well take him. That is classic Eric DeCosta. I'm not surprised that he was looking into pulling the trigger on that.
All things being equal, do you think the Ravens would rather have Shedeur Sanders or Carson Vincent at this point?
Or Carson Vincent?
Because he was the guy.
I mean, the unknown here is what Shedeur Sanders is like in the locker room. The unknown here is also what he would have done if he had been taken by the Ravens. If he had been taken by the Ravens and said, I tried to tell you I didn't want to play there, I'm going to throw a fit. I'm not going to show up. I'm not going to sign the contract, whatever it is. That would have been a disaster. So you avoid that. And it's not like Shedeur Sanders has been absolutely gangbusters since he got taken by Cleveland. He's the 3rd quarterback behind Dylan Gabriel and Joe Flacco right now. So maybe in 3 years, if Shedeur Sanders turns into a viable NFL quarterback, you'd be like, oh, that would have been nice if the Ravens had got him as their backup quarterback. But right now, I think it's a toss-up. Neither guy is playing. Neither Carson Vincent nor Shedeur Sanders through the first 2 games has been active for their team.
I think the most interesting quarterback detail that we got from today is Lamar telling us that he apparently gets an IV every game. That was news to me, news to other reporters who cover this team. We got a shot from the AP, a shot from a banner photographer of him having a bandage, in the kind of nook of his left arm. A little bit strange that you would need an IV for the first quarter, 2nd quarter of a game that, I guess it was decently hot out there, like 85 to 90 degrees on the field. But I hadn't noticed him having the that kind of apparatus or anything installed. And I guess we can ask John Harbaugh that on Monday, because it's a little bit unusual.
It obviously comes a week after he was cramping in the fourth quarter when the Ravens could have gone for it on 4th and 3 from their own territory. They don't. And the fact that Lamar came up grimacing and it later said that he was cramping, that ended up playing a factor into the fact that they did not go for it. So the timing of that is interesting.
Just drink more water, I guess.
It's tough.
I've only
liquid IV. It's tough to get enough fluids.
I played
hot day like today.
No, obviously not a high level athlete, but I played sports from like age 5 to age 17, age 18, and I think I only cramped once.
Really?
Which I'm
Good for you.
fortunate for. It was extremely painful. I think it was coming back from a run, but yeah, I guess just if you feel like you're prone to cramping, then it makes sense to get hooked up to an IV preemptively. But
yeah,
at a certain point, I feel like that gets in the way of what you're trying to do on a normal, snap to snap basis or drive to drive basis.
See, I'm an absolute wuss, and I hate seeing needles go into my arm. So
okay.
that would not be ideal for me. And it's tough because I am a high level athlete, unlike you, Jonas.
Yeah.
That just about does it for our show today. At Jonas_Shaffer is his handle. I'm at Paul Mancano and at All Banner Sports. We have plenty more coverage of this game on thebanner.com, where you can subscribe $1 for 6 months, where Jonas Shaffer, Kyle Goon, Gianna Hahn have much, and Childs Walker have much, much more for you. Jonas and I will have another episode for you at some point later this week, perhaps Thursday. Of course, the Ravens have an extra day to prepare for the Lions because they play them on Monday Night Football here at M&T Bank Stadium, which should be a raucous game. Can't wait to cover that one as well. Can't wait to be back with you on another podcast. Like, rate, review, subscribe to the Banner Ravens podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. Write us a 5-star review, and I will read it out here on the show. Oh, our Who's Got It Better Than, Jonas? Had to give it out. Our word of the day was maturity. Mm-hmm. Who's Got It Better Than goes to Devontez Walker.
Yeah.
2 touchdowns. 3 NFL catches, 3 NFL touchdowns.
He's probably running out of touchdown dances at this point.
Yeah, he's the
more demand than supply.
Most efficient scorer in Ravens history, I think you could say.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much for